Hello again, I'm Dan Miller, Historical Solutions, LLC, and this is Americanism Redux, where we follow the American River to the day of the Declaration of Independence in July of 1776. We're going to hit the highlights for the first quarter of 1773. That's January, February, and March of that year. I thought I'd introduce you or remind you of about 4 major points that have come out of our time together in the first quarter of 73. Number 1. Too big to fail. We've been hearing a lot about that lately in the news, haven't we? The banks, too big to fail. The economic sector is too big to fail. Well, they were hearing that in the first quarter of 1773 in certain parts of London and certain parts of England. The British East India Company is too big to fail. It's a monstrosity of a financial organization and a colonial and imperial organization that's set in India, where the name implies, and they're losing money hand over fist. They're going to go bankrupt as soon as possible unless something is done. And so there's all kinds of secret deals, secret negotiations, back alley, back scratching that's going on in Parliament to figure out how much money do they need, who's going to give them the money, and probably most importantly of all, what strings are attached to the money. So that's what's happening in Parliament and in the halls and alleyways of policy-making and influence-making England in the first quarter of 1773. Now, nobody knows that really in the British colonies in North America. What they do know is some things that are happening in the air, and I'm referring to the birth of an identity. It's the American identity, and you're starting to see signs of it in books and essays and speeches and poems, artistic displays. New organizations are beginning to talk about it, such as libraries in various communities. There's a new magazine that's devoted to the American gentleman and so forth. So an American identity seems to be forming in the early part of 1773 in the air, in the ether. Now, we've talked about secret things. We've talked about abstract, high-level, highbrow, esoteric things like identity. Let's talk about a couple of hard-bitten, hardcore, hard-ground facts that are also part of January, February, March of 1773. The Committees of Correspondence. Remember, we've talked about them before. They're a group that formed together in Boston and spread across Massachusetts and into some other colonies too. And they're formed for one purpose, and that is to advance and promote and push out any information that is pro-colonial, any information that is anti-imperial. And by the way, I'm playing fast and loose with my words. Information is a stretch. It can be facts, it can be reports, it can be rumors, it can be lies, it can be anything in between. Half-baked and full-baked and not baked at all. As long as it's pro-colonial, they want to get it out, and they want to spread it to as many people as possible to increase the attention and to increase the support for pro-colonial rights. So if you can read a book, if you can listen to a speech, you're hearing from the Committees of Correspondence coming out of the town councils, and now for the first time coming out of a legislative assembly, this one in Virginia, which wants its other assemblymen across the colonies to do the same thing, to promote the Committees of Correspondence and what they're trying to push out. That's a new thing in early 1773. That's on the ground, and that's in the dirt. Second thing that's hardcore fact is at the same time that the Committees of Correspondence have become prominent, at the same time in Boston, and in Philadelphia, and in a few other kind of northern New Englandish towns, there are black men and women who are, let's just say it, they're seeking their freedom. They're enslaved, and they're seeking their own emancipations through courts and through legislative assemblies. They want to be free. And that has started in early 1773. In addition, there are some small groups that have started to form in many of those same towns and many of those same communities that are seeking the abolition and the end of enslavement overall. And they're beginning to ask questions about why have we done it, why do we do it, and why do we think we should continue to do it? And I'm talking about enslavement. And so at the same time the Committees of Correspondence have emerged, you also have the emergence of an anti-slavery, anti-enslavement movement that is starting to form. Now, what we're going to keep track of is how these two things work together, how these two things work in tandem or not. Will they collaborate as two different forces, or will they in fact conflict or contradict each other? That's going to be a key part of the story going forward, I promise you that. So that's where we are in the first quarter of 1773, January, February, March, and we'll be heading back into the river once again to see where we go from here. Now remember, It's 24 months before the first battle of the American Revolutionary War. It's 40 months before the day of the Declaration of Independence that will lead to American nationhood. Those things are in the future, those things are unknown. Now think about yourself. We sit here in 2023, 24 months from now, what do you know? 40 months from now, what will be true? They don't know, we don't know, and we're going to find out together. I'm shining a light from the past on the present and into the future. Welcome to Americanism Redux.